Hi boys and girls, today we're going to talk about what subordinating conjunctions are. You will find subordinating conjunctions in a complex sentence. Let's review what a complex sentence is. A complex sentence includes a dependent clause and at least one independent clause. An independent clause is a complete sentence or a simple sentence. However, a dependent clause cannot stand on its own as a complete sentence. It depends on that other independent clause to make a complete sentence. We're also going to review what a clause is. A clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb team. So your clause always has a subject and a verb. There are two kinds of clauses that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about independent clauses, and we're going to talk about dependent clauses. Independent clauses have your subject and verb team. They make sense by themselves, and it's a complete thought. So they are independent. They can stand alone. Okay? And then your dependent clause has a subject and a verb. That is not going to be able to stand on its own, a dependent clause. It has to depend on something else. You need more information for that to make sense. So that's why we call it a dependent clause. The dependent clause cannot stand alone. We already talked about that. But the dependent clause begins with the subordinating conjunction, and that's what we're talking about today, is subordinating conjunctions. I've got here on this slide in red, we've got several of the subordinating conjunctions. And that's what you need to look for to find your dependent clause, because they will start with these words. So we have after, although, as, because, before, even though, if, since, though, unless, until, when, whenever, whereas, wherever, and while. Look for these words to signal that you have a dependent clause. Here are some examples of dependent clauses, and none of these are going to be able to stand on their own. They're all dependent, so you're going to need more information to make them a complete sentence. So we have after we went to dinner, while she got ready for school, before we turned the corner, even though I love you, since you already fed the mice, and as the day has gone on. As you can see, none of these make sense by themselves. You need more information. You need an independent clause added to these to make your complex sentence. They all start with your signal words also, or those are our subordinate conjunctions. Now we're going to watch a video that has subordinating conjunctions in it. So now we're going to practice finding one of those signal words or the subordinating conjunctions that we learned. So looking at this slide, we have a sentence. While I was picking up the cards, the wind picked up and blew them all over the place. We are looking for the subordinating conjunction. So look at these words that we have at the bottom. Them, all, the, and while. See if you can figure out which one of these words we had on our list of subordinating conjunctions. You try to figure out which one of those is a subordinating conjunction. I'll give you a minute to think. Okay, if you picked D, while, you were correct. That was on our list of subordinating conjunctions. And while is your signal. It's right up here. And it comes at the beginning of that dependent clause. So when you see that subordinating conjunction, you know it's the beginning of a dependent clause. Okay, we're going to look again for the subordinating conjunction in the sentence. Here's the sentence. I would like to leave for school at 8 o'clock, unless you aren't ready at that time. Okay, so our choices are you, that, I, unless. See if you can remember which one of those is a subordinating conjunction, and take a guess. Okay, if you picked D, unless, you were right. That is the subordinating conjunction down there. And when I see it in my sentence, that's my signal that it's the beginning of a dependent clause. And my dependent clause is unless you aren't ready at that time. Okay, let's practice one more time. What is the subordinating conjunction in this sentence? Whenever my dog hears thunder, he scurries under my bed. Okay, you're looking for the subordinating conjunction that's going to start your dependent clause. See if you can figure out which word it is. Is it under, he, whenever, or my? Okay, if you picked whenever, you were right. That was one of our subordinating conjunctions. And when you find it in the sentence, you can see that that signals that that is the beginning of a dependent clause. And the dependent clause here is whenever my dog hears thunder. Okay, on this last slide, we're going to find the subordinating conjunction, but we're also going to figure out what the dependent clause is. What is the clause that cannot stand alone? Okay, so here's our sentence. Joe played video games until his mom got home from work. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the subordinating conjunction, and then I know that after that comes my dependent clause, or that starts my dependent clause. Okay, so I'm looking through and I see my signal word until. So there's my signal word until, and I know that's the beginning of my dependent clause. So my dependent clause must be until his mom got home from work. And so that's one of my choices. That's my choice A. So that would be my answer to what the dependent clause is in this sentence. So remember, when you're finding the dependent clause, find the subordinating conjunction first.